Hello, hello, and thank you for joining us today at Author in the Headlights. And today we've got a friend of mine, Marian Exall, and we've known each other for a couple of years. Good morning or good afternoon, Marian. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing good, getting things going here. And this is always so much fun. I enjoy talking to authors, and I know you have a book that just came out, right?
Yeah, came out at the end of February. It called Daughters of Riga. It's my first foray into historical fiction. I've written mysteries in the past, and but this one actually I started it before I published the mysteries. It just took a long time to come to to fruition, and it really is the book of my heart. I'm so glad to have it out there.
That's the Daughters of Riga, correct?
That is right, Daughters of Riga, and it's
World
World
War
War
II Latvia, is that correct?
Yes,
It
Latvia
starts
was
there.
the core of it, Riga
Hmm.
and Latvia, and what happened there in 1939 to 1940 at the Dutch consulate. But it follows the daughters' lives on and all the way through to 2003, and the impact of what happened that year sort of reverberates in the aftermath of war, and we follow several characters and move around between time periods too. So it was all a new level of writing for me, both the genre and the time frames and the voices, different voices. Really, mysteries are quite straightforward compared to this.
That is true. And speaking of voices, they can probably recognize you come from England, correct? Make sure
That's
I'm
right.
right also. But then you've also bounced around the world. I think you've been to France and Belgium. We have spoken in the past in conferences and
Yeah.
things, so I try to remember this stuff. Is that correct?
That is right. I was born and
Woohoo!
raised in England, and left in my early 20s. I got married, and my husband got a job in the south of France, which was fantastic for a short time. And then we moved to Belgium, and then we moved to the United States. And I thought it was going to be another like 2 year horizon, but we moved to Atlanta and stayed there 29 years. So
That's a while. You're in the West Coast now,
I
Northwest here.
Yeah, I came to the Pacific Northwest in 2006. I was a lawyer in Atlanta, but I kind of eased out of the practice of law and took up writing full time after I moved here to the Pacific Northwest.
Well, I'm glad you joined the crowd. There are a lot of writers over here, and which I happen to be one of. And we did meet at a conference here in the Northwest, and that was fun. And we've had your books on DurhamandPublishing.com now for a while, and now we get to hear you too. So now you said there was a big difference actually in writing between writing mysteries and writing historical fiction. And though I kind of know that not from doing so much myself, but from talking to people, what have you found as a difference?
Well, first of all, historical fiction requires research. And you've got to be factually accurate about the setting. Your characters are fictional, the plot is somewhat fictional, although mine is actually based on a true story. But you've got to get the setting right, because if you don't, people will let you know. There are a lot of historians out there, and they will certainly let you know. Whereas with a mystery, especially contemporary mystery, you take what you know that's around you and just run with it. Plus, with
Mhm.
a mystery, you've got a structure. You've got a usually a dead body at the beginning and a resolution at the end, and somehow you join the dots between. Um, but with historical fiction or contemporary fiction or other non-mystery books, you've got to kind of make it different. You've got to work out what is a logical plot here that's not necessarily structured with, the dead body at the beginning.
That's true. Yeah, that's I actually like the thought of creating it differently. And I've never really honestly thought about how different that plot runs, but I can see that thinking at it. Um, and author in the headlights is both for readers and writers. And for the writers of it, those that are considering that, and we have a lot of new writers that listen in to get those little bits of wisdom, those tidbits from people that are doing and know how to do it, to think about that, the process between the two. Because anybody can sit down and come up with a story, but having that story maintain a structure that's required, I can see its difference in there. So which do you like the better? Now you've got the Sarah McKinney mystery series.
Yes,
Um, let me see, the slippery slope. Let me see, the dangerous descent
correct.
and splintered step.
That's right. Yeah,
Woohoo!
all three. And I think that's probably going to be it for Sarah McKinney.
Okay.
I'm actually working, correcting the galleys right now on a mystery that will come out next year called 6 Degrees of Death. And this one, I started it kind of like on a whim. Um, it's sort of modeled on the 6 degrees of separation. So I've got six characters who don't know each other, but they're connected by a death. So it is a mystery, and it's set in the Pacific Northwest this time. My earlier books have been set all over the world, but this one is back home, and I'm looking forward to that one coming out.
Well, that sounds like fun. And I could see the interesting part for me is how to put those six different people that are all kind of protagonists, at least in their own rights, building them together and making it come about to a single script.
Yeah.
That sounds like fun.
It was fun to write. It really was. Correcting the galleys is never fun. That's the most tedious thing you can do. But the writing was fun, and I'm looking forward to the finished product.
Back to Daughters of Riga. Do you find that difficult to correlate those two things, the past to the future?
Well, I don't know how to answer that really. World War II has fascinated me all my life. Although I was born after the war, it was kind of like the determinating factor in my life. I mean, I grew up in England where the war was very present. We still had bomb sites. I still remember rationing, food rationing. So I wanted to write about that period, but I needed a lens to describe it because obviously I wasn't alive then, or I wasn't, conscious. So I decided to take these two daughters, these two girls who met during the war and then grew to adulthood after the war, and tell the story through their lens. And that's what required me to kind of come into I won't say into the future, but come into a more contemporary time period, and then look back at what they had endured and sort of move around between the time periods. It's more challenging, I know, for the reader. It was certainly more challenging for me to write that way. But once I've decided to use that lens of the daughters, their story, I kind of had to do it that way, moving between time periods.
Mm-hmm. It sounds exciting. Actually, I can't wait to read it. And do you have a particular method of writing that you found works for you? I know you've got mysteries versus this, but
Yeah.
how do you go about it? Answer, plotter, is it all laid out? You
Oh,
just,
I usually, at least for the mysteries, I have an outline, and that takes me about halfway through, and then I get in the muddy middle, and I don't know where I'm going. I cannot work out how to end. So what I do is I write the final chapter, and then I can join the dots. And I think John Updike is a novelist who uses this technique
mm-hmm.
of writing the final chapter. Actually, I think he writes it first before he writes anything else. But then when you can see where you're going, then you can finish the book. But I think, as I say, I think I'm halfway a pantser, halfway a plotter. And it works for me, but so far, fingers crossed.
All right. No, I know what you mean. My books, I have got to change my methodology. Pantser all the way. I just sit down and the book kind of just go, I don't even know where it's going. It's that scary. It flows when it flows, and then you go, now what?
Well, I
So
think you probably have this experience too. Once you've created your characters, and it sounds a bit sort of woo-woo, but once you've created your characters kind of take the book and go with it. They tell
absolutely.
you where to go with it. So that I think is the most exciting thing about writing when you've got a convincing character and the character is in your head and they're telling you where to go.
It is, it sounds funny to somebody that is not a writer,
Yeah.
but the book writes itself. Once you get in there, now it takes a lot of work to get there, but once you sit down, and it's not like I spent 45 minutes on the computer, it's like I spent 45 hours. And then because it's developing in your mind, that character takes on its own person and it does tell you where it's going. It in my mind, in yours, it sounds like the same way, and
Mhm.
it just comes out.
Which is one reason why I do not have a set time for writing. I know there are a lot of people out there, get up at 5 a.m. in the morning and they write for 3 hours and
Not me.
I have to say that I write when I want to write. For me, if it stops being a joy, I'm going to stop writing. I write for enjoyment.
Yes,
I have to tell you a little story. Robert Dugoni, who
do.
great mystery writer and a novelist. He's now actually written what I would call historical fiction too. Um, I took a workshop from him, and we were a group of would-be writers, and agonizing over, what do you do about writer's block and blah blah. And he said, "Look, nobody is holding a gun to your head. Nobody is waiting for the next great American novel. Just stop. If it's no longer fun, just stop doing it." And
Absolutely.
I've taken that to heart. Nobody is holding a gun to my head, and I'm writing when I want to write.
I do consider him a friend, and we've had him here at Author in the Headlights. Just a great time. I totally enjoy it. And I
Yeah,
take his words of wisdom to heart. I tell you,
yeah.
thank you so much for spending part of your day here with us at Author in the Headlights. We
Thank you,
enjoyed so
Strider.
much. And it's
Yeah, it's been a
unfortunately I
pleasure.
missed you this year, but now we're catching up. That's good. And I'll see you again next year. All right. And to those of the rest of you, thank you for joining us here at Author in the Headlights, sponsored by DurhamandPublishing.com. And we'll see you all again next week, I hope. Bye.
Bye.
Sponsored by DurhamandPublishing.com.